Hey guys, we're in beautiful Santa Barbara, California. I'm hanging out with the founder of Amego, Virginia Block. How's it going?
Good. How are you doing, guys?
This is fantastic. Just a beautiful day. Beautiful. We've got a park down there with some cliffs and stuff, and we're looking at a couple of the bikes. They're actually hooked up to my car rack, and I wanted to point out that we have removed the battery packs so that they wouldn't be straining it too much. I only have a 1/4-inch hitch, but it wasn't too tough. We got those up there together, and we're excited to ride. Hey guys, so we found a spot. The thing is, there aren't really any mountains immediately close by, and since this is kind of a Class 2, Class 3 electric bike, I thought it would be cool to review it just on the street. It's actually a pretty cool bike in the sense that you could upgrade and grab their little rack, and it has an included light on there, and they also have some mud guards. There's some really cool upgrades on this. Only comes in one size, 19 inches, and it comes in 2 different colors. So this is the space gray, kind of metallic, and then they have brushed aluminum, which looks really nice. Might be a little bit more like visible from the side actually if you're riding at night and using it as a commuter platform. I like bikes like this even if you aren't in the mountains because the tires give you a little bit more cushion, and there's a longer travel 100mm suspension fork in the front. Love that it's got disc brakes, hydraulic disc brakes, so there's adjustable reach on these levers, can bring them in, a little bit easier to actuate. This bike is neat the way the battery is integrated in the down tube, sort of a semi-integrated. It's stepped in a little bit so it keeps the weight lower, and it makes a little bit more room here so that top tube can angle down. You have a lower standover height. Still have bottle cage bosses here, which is really nice. Even if you don't use them, you could take those bolts out so you don't scratch yourself on them. But if you wanted, you could have a folding lock or maybe a water bottle here if you're someone who's taller and you're not having a problem with standover height. Again, just a lot of possibilities, but the name Elevate, to me, that's about like elevating you, like taking you up into the hills, into the mountains, and it has a pretty capable hub motor. So that's an internally geared 80 Newton meter, 500 watt DOS kit motor back here. Okay, so considering how powerful it is, it's pretty compact, it's relatively quiet, and it seems to be fairly reliable. I've reviewed these before on some other bikes, and I also noticed that it's spoked in with a bit thicker, like 13 gauge spokes, nice black rims, nice black fork, and there's the accents and stuff that tie in pretty well. Longer stem with a little bit more of an angle, and we've got several risers here, so it brings it up with the ergonomic grips. Back to like, how is this thing set up? You could angle that stem down if you wanted to be more aggressive, or remove some of those spacers if you wanted to. You could lock out that suspension so you're not losing a lot of efficiency like with bobbing, or if you're a heavier rider, you can actually go to the other side and preload this. It's a basic suspension. It's not air, it's a spring, and these are 30mm steel stanchions, so they're not like anodized aluminum. It does weigh a little bit more, 56.4 pounds on this bike, and that's without the rack or anything. The battery itself is like 9 pounds, but it offers fairly good capacity. So 48 volt, 13 amp hour, 624 watt hours. It's going to give you better range. However, you do spin through it a little bit quicker with that zippier motor, and if you're using the trigger throttle. So again, it depends on how you're riding this thing. I often approach these bikes with like, okay, kind of comfort in mind, and maybe if you can only have one bike, using it for multiple different activities. And I always think about replacing these seat posts with like a suspension post, because that would really soften up the ride. It's 30.9mm, so it's a step down from 31.6, but definitely wider and sturdier than 27.2, which is a very common one. So just keep that in mind if you're going to get like some shims, or maybe you can upgrade. Virginia, you guys actually sell those body floats, don't you?
Yes, it's a common upgrade. Our customers and my staff love them.
Cool. Yeah, me too. I'm a big fan. And we actually have your other Freedom folding electric bike over here, and it has just a cheaper, it's like 40mm of travel on that, but it's built in to that swiveling saddle post mount. I like that. So on that one, it's totally separate bike and everything, but I just wanted to call that out as something that crosses my mind when I'm looking at bikes like this that could be used in an urban or kind of a trail environment. It does seem trail capable to me. The tires are pretty decent. These are Schwalbe Smart Sam. They're 27.5 by 2.25, so a little bit wider, decent knobs. They should be fairly reliable. They have this performance liner. Schwalbe makes good stuff, and I like that a lot of these cables are sort of raised up, and some of them are internally routed. I did notice that the controller box is a bit exposed right here, and especially if you're on trails and stuff, but my first instinct was like, oh, that's exposed to water and everything, but it's completely sealed. And I think that helps to dissipate heat. So the controller has 9 MOSFETs and it's 18 amps, so it's sending, again, a little bit more power through. It's a 48 volt system. Virginia was telling me that they're all waterproof connectors and stuff, and you can see up here, they're raised. I have seen threaded with like little rubber washers, so there is a level that's higher, but these are designed to be, and I think they're color coordinated, right? So if you unplug them, you can kind of see what's, let's see, these are the Joulette. Yeah, if we unplug them, they're coordinated so that you can tell what's going on here. It might be a little bit easier to service. I'm bringing some of this up because you have a shop in Toronto, and there are actually several shops around the US. Yes. However, you also sell online, so you can ship these directly. Yeah. Okay, so, you know, if you're buying this online, you might end up having to put the front wheel on, turning the handlebars. What are the other steps?
The front wheel comes on.
Really?
It basically comes fully assembled. It takes about 5 minutes out of the box, but we do go through every bike before we ship it out. But they're, the most flawless bike we have sold.
Okay, and you've been doing this since 2010.
2010, yes.
Yeah, that's great. I can see there's a lot of like learning going on here over time. Improvements, like incremental improvements. That's the kind of thing that, you know, you're saving some money maybe, or if you live somewhere that's not near a shop, and you also have like a 1-year warranty, so there's some coverage there if there's issues. Yeah,
it's very reliable, very easy, and the bike was designed so that we could easily sell it online and have, we really look to have the most reliable bike we could find.
Okay,
and
cool.
build.
Well, thank you. You know, the marketing speak there, but you have been in business for a while and you've got a shop, so you actually see what customers struggle with and come back to your shop, and you have more hands-on, I'd suppose, than other other manufacturers that don't have a shop. So I don't know, that's kind of unique, and it's always fun to be hanging out with someone who's from the company. Let's talk about the drivetrain here. So we've got this nice slap guard, which is important if you're going off-road on those trails because the chain could be bouncing. You know, mid-level Shimano Acera derailleur. It doesn't have like the clutch or any of the other fancy stuff, but there is this steel derailleur guard, and it also protects the power cable going to the motor. That's really nice if the bike tips over. Okay, and it just keeps it, again, like brush or sticks or anything from touching this. 11 to 32 tooth, 8 sprocket cassette in the back, and then we have 3 chain rings, 28, 38, and 48 tooth. I tend to leave it in just the middle sprocket, 38 tooth. That works for me because I'm not going too extremely fast or climbing too much. You know, the faster sprocket here would be the 48 tooth, and then the 28 tooth would be easier for climbing. And again, this bike, you could climb on it. It'd be pretty capable, I think. You would want to switch gears though, because with a hub motor compared to a mid-drive, you know, the motor only really has like one gear, so to speak, right? It's just fixed to this axle, and the wheel diameter, that's what it has to work with. Whereas a mid-drive, you'd be shifting gears and stuff, but a mid-drive can wear your drivetrain out a little bit more. And this bike's actually fairly balanced. We were weighing it earlier by the nose of the saddle, and it stayed pretty centered. And then this bike also has sort of like a higher top speed, like 25, 26 miles per hour.
Yeah, it does.
Kind of thing.
But
okay.
The throttle will only do the 20 miles per hour.
And that's the classes and stuff. So you could completely remove the throttle, and this would be class 1. I think in the display you can actually go and adjust the speed a little bit. You could bring it down, but I called it class 3 on the review because it does go a little faster. Mm-hmm. And that's back to getting around town. Like on the street, you just have, it's like the SUV commuter platform in a way. Okay, so coming back to the drivetrain here, that front derailleur acts as kind of a chain guide too, so you shouldn't have problems with the chain flopping off, which is something you see with the single chain ring, but that also simplifies and lightens the bikes. Okay, so this bike weighing a little bit more, 56.4 pounds, standard 170 millimeter Shimano crank arms, Welgo paddles with the fixed pins. I like those. Those are some of my favorites, especially stock. They just get the job done. And then coming back up here to the cockpit, I want to talk about, you know, how this thing functions and some of the display buttons and stuff, and also this tapered head tube. So if you wanted to, you get this bike, the suspension's kind of basic, even though it does have lockout. You could always upgrade that to like an air fork or a loft or something else later because of that tapered head tube. So it's nice that you're not locked into like 1.1 inch straight. And then the brakes, I talked about them a little bit earlier, but 180 millimeter rotors. You're getting a pretty good mechanical advantage with that. Keep an eye on that rear tire, okay? Like make sure the pressure is is within the rated range here. So they say 26 to 54 psi. If you get too low and you hit a curb or something, you could get a pinch flat, and then servicing this is going to be a bit more work because it just has those nuts. It's not like a quick release, and you have to deal with the motor cable and stuff, but it does have a disconnect. So, you know, they're trying. It's like getting that off and servicing it yourself isn't going to be too hard, but it's definitely going to be more work than like a mid-drive. And the kickstand, it's mounted in the middle of the frame versus back here, probably to make room for the hydraulic disc brake, and that means you can get pedal lock. So if you're walking the bike backwards or whatever, it can collide. You can see there's some chipping already down there. Something I see a lot. And now we can see the charging port on the battery, but imagine plugging into that. It's very close to that crank arm, and you could shear it off or bend it. So just be careful when you're charging. Always try not to move the bike until the bike is off, until you've unplugged it, all that stuff. And down here on the other side, you know, there's the control unit. We were talking about the controller, but we also have, I believe this is 12 magnet sealed cadence sensor. So really compact, stays out of the way, and especially on a trail bike like this where you might have mud and stuff, it's just a little bit more durable than some of those older cadence sensors where you can actually see the magnets and there's a separated, you know, read unit and stuff. It's just nice to have that all sealed away and tight and everything right there. It's not going to be quite as dynamic as, again, some of the mid-drives where they're measuring torque or a multi-sensor unit, but you know, there are 6 levels of assist on this bike, so it's actually pretty, there's a decent amount of range. And then sometimes I struggle with these little, you know, covers here. You got to kind of line that up, and I would take the time to seat that in properly each time, especially with the potential of riding in dust and mud and stuff like that. So here's the battery. I like that there's an integrated standard size USB Type A port, 5 volts, 500 milliamps, and it's relatively out of the way. So if you're pedaling, you're not going to kick that thing or snag the wire. And on Amazon, they have these right angle adapters, so you could bring the wire up here, and then you could have your, like a phone, GPS, things like that, helping you get around town, or maybe some music or whatever. It's nice to be able to tap in that battery because it is such a high capacity battery. I'm going to go ahead and unlock the pack. Just insert the key like that, twist, and then there's this lever. Oh, there we go. Kind of pull it off. Really nice pack. Lithium ion cells inside. Again, 9.2 pounds. It's a heavier pack, but you're getting a lot of power, and it's positioned right where you want it. Pretty low in center, and it feels pretty stable in this frame, especially compared to the external like shark packs and dolphin packs that you see sometimes, and it just looks nicer too. I definitely appreciate that. Take the keys out. So we have trigger shifters on both the right and the left. This is definitely a more crowded cockpit because there are the 24 speeds on this bike. And this one has, you know, kind of multi-shift, so you go click, click, click on the low gear. And then there's the high trigger up here. We've got the little windows to help you understand what's going on if you're a little bit new to the, you know, shifting, and especially with this many gears. I noticed that the trigger throttle is a bit of a reach, so trying to get over there and push that, and see it's sticking a little bit right now, so over time it might not stick. There is a spring in there. Just, you know, let it loosen up over time, or maybe, you know, do this a couple times to get it straightened out if you're having that issue. You could probably mount this throttle in a little bit, but then the shifters are going to collide with that little plastic wire housing. Again, it's crowded. The bell is there. It's within reach because there's plenty of room, but that's one of the trade-offs. You know, if you could have a twist throttle, but then on a mountain bike, if you get a little, you know, unstable and you grab down on the grip, sometimes you can accidentally twist and lose traction on the grip and activate the throttle accidentally. So I do like the trigger throttle. I just feel like it's a little bit out of the way. We did see another one of the Amego bikes where they had it on the left side and then you had to push it up. So that's always an option. But then you got the display unit. So like I said, there's kind of a lot going on up here. Keep your eye out for that. I'm gonna go ahead and activate the display. You hold the M button for a second and it boots right up. I didn't have to press any other buttons or anything. It's really straightforward. And then we have a power meter at the top. Let's see if I can get that to go. So I'm tipping the bike up, pressing the throttle. There we go. See where it said power for a second? So that's measuring the amps of power that are flowing through, like the current. And then 6 bars on that battery indicator. Speed, it's in kilometers per hour right now, but if we held plus and minus, you can actually get into the settings and you can change that. And that's also where you could lower the top speed if you're someone who may be a little bit intimidated by the higher speeds or just want to get better range. And we have assist levels. It's in 1 right now, but you can go down to 0 and still use the throttle. I love that the throttle overrides all of those other levels of assist, but it's basically always hot. So again, if you forget that the bike's on and you bump this, you know, the bike can kind of get away from you. So it's a little bit more advanced in that sense. And down here we have all the trip stats. So if I press the M, it's like, you know, total distance, total time, trip distance, max speed, and then, you know, other trip stats right in here. It's pretty cool. If we hold the plus button for a second, backlighting turns on. And if you hold the minus button for a couple seconds, we've got walk mode, which is just, you know, 3.7 miles per hour. Pretty handy if you're, you know, get like a flat tire or something and you're trying to climb that hill, or, you know, there are all kinds of situations. Walk across the park versus ride, so you're not getting in anyone's way. I think that's pretty comprehensive. We looked at the drive system and everything, talked about the motor. 80 newtons meters of torque is phenomenal, and it's really hard to judge that because there are some mid drives that say 75, and they offer really high torque if you're in a low gear. This one, it's just sort of like, again, you have one sort of ratio because it's a hub motor, but it gives you a lot of freedom with like the throttle and everything like that. So I'm stoked about it. Okay, I got the saddle all straightened out, and I just wanted to point out, this is what the charger looks like. It's about 1.5 pounds, 2 amp charger. That's normal, right? There are 4 amp chargers that go faster. This one, it's just a little bit cheaper, and especially with a battery that's 624 watt hours, it's gonna take you 6+ hours if you completely drain the pack. But to really take care of these, I recommend storing it in a cool, dry location. Avoid extreme temperatures. Extreme heat and cold can be kind of hard on the pack. It's nice that you could take it in with you if you like commute to work or something and bring it up to your office and lock the bike outside. But the display panel is not removable. It doesn't really swivel very easily unless you loosen it a lot. Actually, it's swiveling a little bit right now, so that can reduce your glare. But just keep in mind, try not to drop the battery pack. It's got that little integrated lever, which is nice to help carry it around. And then check on it every couple months. If you haven't ridden the bike for a while, I've heard it's not great to let it get below 20%. It sort of stresses the chemistry in the cells. And then there's that pedal lock I was talking about. So before I can really get on the bike, I'm just gonna, yep, there we go, raise it. Got the kickstand out of the way. And here we go. I'm in assist level 6, which is like the highest, very zippy. It's gonna be the loudest, but I wanna give you some idea of how responsive it is. No problem with this grass. The bike tracks really well. It feels very stable, especially with these slightly larger tires. They're not plus size. The front axle is just standard like 9mm skewer, but it has quick release, so that can make the bike a little bit easier to load into your car or whatnot. And I always take the battery off just to make it easier to lift. So we're up to like almost 40 kilometers. So that's that like 25 mile per hour top speed that we were talking about. It's a unique setup here. Sometimes it's nice to have that extra speed. Okay guys, from here you can see those 3 chain rings, the slap guard, and that nice cassette in the back. I'm going to shift through the gears a little bit. Again, you're not going to get any mashing or additional wear because this is a hub motor. The Cadence Sensor, it is more of an on-off, start-stop kind of thing, but you can override with the brake lever. It's got the motor inhibitor. And I find that it starts, it takes just a second to start, but it stops pretty quickly. And again, I like that sealed design. I'm going to do this on the highest level of assist so you can really get a feel for that motor. Climbing a little bit. You know, hub motors, you can't really shift gears to empower them. This one's a little bit zippier and it kind of balances weight versus power. It does a pretty good job. I'm on a bit of a hill here and it's doing fine with the throttle. In this view, you should be able to see the suspension activate a little bit. Okay, I got the seat raised all the way. This is the Freedom, the folding one, and Virginia has volunteered to hop on the Elevate. And yeah, I mean, you're doing pretty well, right? She's kind of in the like modesty position right now.
Sorry.
Tiptoes on the other side, but you know, I guess, how tall are you?
5'5".
5'5", you know, and this is the 19-inch frame, only one size, but because of that deeper step through, she was able to get on, and it works. It's a pretty cool looking bike. So we're just gonna ride along so you guys can get the third-person perspective. Go for it. She's shifting those gears, and we're actually climbing a bit of a hill here. So I noticed that on the Freedom, that the motor is a little bit louder. It's a Bafang motor, maybe not quite as refined. It also doesn't have the pure sine wave controller like you've got over here on the Elevate. So that's nice. The DOS kit motors are a little bit quieter.
They are.
Yeah. Even though this is a 500 watt and this one's only 350. So yeah, it's interesting to see this stuff back to back. Thanks, Virginia. Well, guys, I think that's about it. It's always fun to hang out with someone from the company, but I try to be independent too and give you all the details. I have even more specifications, including standover height, width, length, all that other stuff back at the website, ElectricBikeReview.com. Have fun out there on these things. Please follow the rules because, again, this is technically class 3 if you're going faster, and it has the throttle. So, you know, we're in California right now, and they don't allow that on the trails, and want to be like a good ambassador for e-bikes. So just keep that in mind. This bike offers a lot of possibilities, and you could, you know, remove that throttle and stuff. Just have fun out there and ride safe.